Okay, hi everybody. Today we have a special interview with the rector of Christ Church. For those who do not know, Christ Church is the oldest Protestant church in the entire Middle East. So this church has seen many wars over the centuries. And we have right now the rector of Christ Church. His name is David Pileggi. I've known David for many years, and I love his understanding of the text, the Hebraic perspective of the Christian faith. And we like David right now to just answer a couple of questions that might be confusing for believers in terms of his application of the text, especially in a time like this. All right, so David, thanks so much for your time. Yeah, we really appreciate it. Yeah, so obviously we know what happened on October 7th, and the aftermath is Israel launched a frontal attack to rescue hostages, but also to eliminate Hamas.
Right.
So as believers, Jesus would command, "Blessed are the peacemakers." Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your stand on how Christians should read the text and apply it to their lives vis-a-vis what's going on with the war?
Well, it's certainly true that we have to work for peace, and we must work for reconciliation, and we should be salt and light in the midst of every conflict. But it's also true, and I believe this firmly, that the New Testament does not prohibit self-defense. In fact, I like to remind people of the story of Jesus and Peter. And just before the death of Jesus, and as recorded in Luke's Gospel, Peter says to Jesus, "Look, I have 2 swords. Is this enough?" And Jesus says, "It is enough." Now, how do we understand that? 2 swords certainly would defend, perhaps, and preserve his life if needed. But Peter doesn't have 1,000 swords, and he doesn't have an army, and he's not going to achieve God's purposes, right, with the point of the sword. But defending human life, defending ourselves, is necessary in a very, very fallen world. And I say that wars of self-defense can be justified, but of course within certain limits. And the conflict that we have now between Israel and Hamas is indeed a war of self-defense. However, after the defeat of Hamas, I do not believe that the solution to the Arab-Israel conflict or to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict can be solved with F-16s or with tanks. There needs to be some kind of reconciliation, and if at all possible, I don't know if it's really possible in the near future, there needs to be a diplomatic political solution, and there needs to be a change of heart amongst many Jews and Arabs.
Wow. Yeah, that is so true. So, I heard that some say that Hamas is actually following up or following through on what actually the Quran says, where the goal of to be a Muslim, the high goal is to wage jihad. It seems to some people that's what Hamas is doing. And on the other hand, I'm also kind of confused because Islam is supposed to be a religion of peace.
Right.
So how would you reconcile this? So
I think perhaps maybe you need to ask some Muslims this question. However, it is certainly true that the Quran can be and is being interpreted in a way that is extremely violent and murderous. And certainly a small group of Muslims around the world understand it in such a manner. However, there are other Muslims who certainly do not interpret the Quran in this manner. It does raise a good point that in part what we have here in the Middle East Israel versus the Palestinians, Israel versus the Arab Islamic world, is not only a conflict over land or territory or refugees. It's not merely a political conflict, but there is also a religious dynamic and a religious element that's a part of this conflict. And unfortunately, in the West or many other places around the world where people don't have a spiritual sensitivity or don't understand spiritual things, they will miss this dynamic. And so I think Christians have a certain advantage here. We're called to fast, we're called to pray, we're called to engage in spiritual warfare, which is not just making proclamations or blowing a shofar. This, of course, doing things that are practical, doing things that are expressions of love, helping maybe Jews and Arabs certainly to find ways to start talking to each other.
And also, just to let our viewers know that your son is in the front lines, right?
It's not simply my son. It's many from our community have been called upon by the state of Israel, to engage in this fight against evil. And answer to the question, what can Christians be doing? I think, of course, we can support the fight against evil. At the same time, we need to pray for Israel, that it acts in a very moral and ethical way, and tell our Israeli and Jewish friends we do support them, but at the same time we expect them to wage this war against Hamas in a way that will harm the least number of innocent civilians, Palestinian civilians. I think we need to, on one hand, reject the ideology of Islam and any Islamic extremist organization, but at the same time we cannot hate Muslims, and we should be very, very careful to distinguish between the two, between those who have a fanatical Islamic ideology and those who might simply be Muslims. We need to love them like we love and care for the Jewish people. Many people ask, what are we doing? Well, we're a small community of Jewish believers in Jesus, Arab Christians, and others who come from many nations around the world. And our community is quite active at the moment, very active in helping the victims of this conflict. And there are many victims. We're helping families who have been bereaved, those who had relatives or children murdered by Hamas. We're helping those who are refugees, those who've had to leave their homes. Many Arab Christians have lost their jobs because the tourist trade has now collapsed. And so they're coming to us for food. We are assisting a number of families with all kinds of legal problems that have arisen out of this conflict. Some have lost their homes. Some need government assistance, but because of the bureaucracy, just can't get it. So we have lawyers who are working for us. And all that we do, Kenny, we want to do things in a way that models reconciliation. So we have Arab lawyers helping Jewish victims. We have Jewish lawyers oftentimes, or Jewish members of staff who are helping the hungry in places like Bethlehem or other parts of the West Bank. And we have Arab Christians, yes, who have been donating and giving money to help the Jewish people. I think this is the best way to help people, is to do it in a way that reflects really the value and the spirit of the New Testament.
If you're interested to donate to the work of the Mercy Fund, please, we'll give you a link underneath. The monies that you donate to the Mercy Fund would be verified and checked thoroughly, used in a way that would honor the Lord, and this is what the heart is here. And so we thank you for your support.